welcome. This is our last of our summer school leadership webinars, and I'm delighted to welcome you all today. Might I ask, if you don't mind, to put on your video so we can see who's joining us? That would be lovely. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. And it makes it easier for our faculty when she's speaking to be able to see who's here and if you have any questions as she goes along. So I'm Mary Ellen Joyce, and I'm delighted to welcome some current students. Hello, Mary Ellen. Uh, uh, Potential students, alumni, BC staff, and friends of Woods College of Advancing Studies to our leadership webinar on communicating to connect. As I said, I'm Mary Ellen Joyce. I'm the program director of the Masters of Science in Leadership. I'm a former retiree. I came back to my alma mater last year to head up the leadership program. And we have been in the process over the past year of overhauling the program to focus more on leadership. And we did a meta-analysis last year on models of what leadership in today's world should look like. What competencies and capabilities do leaders today need? We looked at research being done by McKinsey and Deloitte and some top search firms like Korn Ferry. And they were all proposing that an emphasis on leading from the heart, to inspire and enrich human experience, to lead with respect and compassion, to connect with others, to lead with purpose, to achieve common good, to lead with courage and boldness and vision. And as we saw all these various competencies, we noticed that there was striking familiarity for us because they reflected the principles of Ignatian leadership. So with that, we reconfigured the program to reflect both a marriage. If somebody could turn off their audio. Okay, thank you. So what we did was we married these new leadership or these new models of leadership with the BC's DNA as a Jesuit university, that we combining them, we came up with a curriculum that we believe will help develop and create the leaders the world so desperately needs today. So our last session will be focusing on communications, and our faculty member for our communications concentration, who's been overseeing the renovations to that cluster of courses, is Erin Sheehy. She teaches strategies for communications. She also teaches social media influence. She is a leader in strategic communications. She's currently a co-founder of a firm, Rewired Consulting, following a career as executive director of communications at Raytheon, vice president of communications at Xerox, vice president of communications at Fidelity. She is a BC alum and holds an MBA from Rensselaer Polytech. And it is just a pleasure to welcome you all here to our webinar and turn it over to my friend and colleague, Erin Sheehy. Erin.
Thanks so much, Mary Ellen. And Marisol, I just want to make sure that everybody's still seeing this in slideshow mode. I had to come offline quickly, and I just wanted to make sure it's still, everybody's giving me thumbs up. Okay, great. Great. You never know when you switch around a little bit. Well, thanks for that kind introduction, Mary Ellen, and welcome everyone. I'm excited to talk with you today and share a little bit about strategic leadership and strategic communications and the interdependencies between both of them. Before I get started, though, I'm going to just start with, uh, of course, I'm not moving forward. Hold on a second. Okay. I just want to start with a personal anecdote, just share with you from my own career. It's actually about 2 years ago in July of 2022, and I'm leading a new team. Here we are there. And that team was actually formed during COVID. We had a big merger at the company, and the team was formed. And because it was during COVID, we never really had a chance to meet in person. We were, we, each employee we were from 8 different states, and we would meet in small groups when we could, and also over Zoom, just like we are now. We spent a lot of time getting a lot done over Zoom. So when we were finally able to get together on that in July of 22, we were thrilled. We had tons to do. And we had, because the business had just created its 5-year strategy. And we also were launching a new brand positioning program. And we were getting ready for our 23 campaign priorities for the fiscal year. So when we finally got together, I was eager to jump into this ambitious agenda and really just roll up our sleeves and get to work. But then I thought about it, that most of the individuals, although they saw each other every day over a computer screen, hadn't really met or connected in person. So I tried something a little different. We stepped back, and for the first hour to 90 minutes, we all answered we answered 3 questions. The first one was what you see here on the screen. What are you feeling? And this is a different question than how are you feeling, because it really requires the responder to step back and think about what they're feeling in the moment versus just saying, fine, good, okay. So we started there. The second question was kind of a typical one. What do you expect to get out of the next 2 days? But the third question wasn't quite as typical. The third question asked everyone, what I did was ask everybody, were there any external factors or obstacles kind of getting in their way or that might impact their way to experience the next 2 days? I kicked us off. And I was nervous because I had never really done anything quite like this before. I was kind of a more like, let's roll up our sleeves and get right into the work kind of leader runner. So I started off. And for that third question, I actually shared something that was going on with my family that summer that was really weighing on me. And just shared that with the group. Wasn't easy, had to be vulnerable and shared that story with them. And then I turned it over to the team and opened it up. And they opened up and they shared and they empathized and they really connected. And it really set the tone for the rest of the meeting. And we had an extremely productive meeting that we reviewed the strategies, found out how we could connect to the new strategy. And I got a lot of feedback from the team that they were craving that connection because even though, again, they saw each other on the screen each day, they hadn't really interacted or really got to know each of their team members individually. And so I share that anecdote with you just because we are talking about connection today and communications. And I thought it was just a good way to kick us off. Mary Ellen mentioned St. Ignatius and Ignatian leadership principles when in her opening comments. And it made me think about St. Ignatius and when he lived during the Renaissance. And here's a sketch of him actually from a Renaissance artist, a Dutch artist, I believe. And it's remarkable to think of him living during this time of rebirth in Western Europe and how that impacted his own leadership style and how those principles that he espoused are relevant for leaders today. And that he was a Renaissance leader, and the leaders that the world needs today are Renaissance leaders too. I actually wish I had coined the phrase Renaissance leader, but there are a lot of leadership consultants out there, and thought leaders and bloggers that have already used that phrase quite a bit. And no wonder, it's an apt phrase because Renaissance leaders, it really captures the way that a strategic leader needs to be multidimensional. And they really aren't jacks of all trades. They're masters of many. They have to be curious. They have to be welcoming, inclusive, and really foster an environment of belonging, respecting every voice. And here are just a few of the roles that they play and hats that they wear, my little Renaissance hats there. But what we're going to do is talk about two of them. The leader as a strategist and the leader as a translator or storyteller. Staying with our Renaissance or artistic theme today, the book, The Art of the Strategic Leadership, really does what I feel is does a memorable job of breaking down strategic leadership into 7 traits, or traits that leaders really have to master the art of.
So bad. 7 was right.
The first of those, oh, I just hear somebody's background noise. I'm sorry. The first of those, that strategic leaders really need to know the art of ownership. They have to act like owners who feel a responsibility for their work as if it's their own business or their own organization. And they also need to inspire their teams to feel the same way. They may provide guardrails for the team, but the expectation is that they're empowered to own their customers, their budgets, their client relationships, and that sense of ownership makes them feel like they're actually a part owner of the company as well. Strategic leaders also excel at the art of tenacity. They have the resolve to make things better despite obstacles. And they really use their strategy as a compass, and this keeps them focused on executing their strategy and making decisions based on that strategy. Ideally, this tenacity is contagious, and their teams actually take on kind of the dogged determination that the leader espouses and brings the strategy into reality. They also excel at the art of risk. In order to make their vision and strategy come to life, they have to be bold and courageous and take risks, especially in today's fast-changing global economy. Really good strategic leaders operate with the belief that they can't afford not to take risks. Awareness of external surroundings and the inner self is also another trait of strategic leader. They're aware of the world around them, the trends that might impact their strategy, the market dynamics that may impact their strategy. And they can step back from the day-to-day and engage in breakthrough thinking. They also have a keen awareness of self, which I know has also been addressed in some of the other webinars. They understand their strengths and their opportunities and areas for growth and how that impacts their leadership style. Strategic leaders are also agility or dexterity artists. They can quickly assess situations, reframe their options, and figure out their next moves. They're able to spot opportunities despite adversity, and they can inspire their teams to do the same. Strategic leaders are also change drivers. They don't run away from change, but they actually run to it. And they work to push change forward. Status quo is not an option for strategic leaders. And last, but certainly not least, strategic leaders excel at vision and painting a picture for where they're headed and bringing their teams and employees with them. They connect their teams to that picture of the future state and inspire them to come with them. And that's what brings me to the leader as a translator and storyteller, which is where my field and my background comes in, both as a leader and as a communications professional. Strategic leaders can have the best strategies in the world, but that's not enough. They also need to align the organization to that strategy so that they can see their role in the strategy and how their individual job and work impacts that strategy. And leaders that are able to translate that strategy in an effective way really tell stories. They're able to both translate the more complex concepts, but tell them in a way that's a memorable story. Most leaders have multiple stakeholders. Here's Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, who is a well-known, dynamic, and effective communicator. You don't have to be the CEO for one of the world's largest companies, though, to have to speak to multiple stakeholders and audiences. But here are just a few of the many that Satya needs to deliver messages to on a regular basis. For example, the first picture is of him communicating at a large town hall of employees. And the middle one is him with Lester Holt communicating to the media during a minor crisis that Microsoft is inserting themselves into the conversation. And the third is communicating with customers, another important stakeholder, at Microsoft's annual meeting, which they call Ignite. Communications professionals work closely with leaders like Satya Nadella to help them be effective translators in storytelling, because storytelling is a tool that can help, as I mentioned, employees connect the dots. It all starts with the audience. Who does the leader want to connect with? What research can be done to better understand the audience care about? And what messages may resonate with them? And that's where data comes in. Whether it's a customer survey or an employee survey, focus groups, or some of the digital metrics that can be analyzed around digital communications, they all can help better target the message and make sure that the message will resonate with the audience. Be yourself. Authentic is an overused word in communications, but there's a reason for it. Leaders who can be themselves in communications and really speak from their own voice will help them connect with external audiences. Why should the audience care about this particular message or this particular story? And by humanizing the story through relatable challenges or obstacles, it can help foster trust and connection with the audience as well. I don't point out specifically on this slide channel selection, and though it's not listed here, it's another consideration because it really ties to how your audience receives information. So it really kind of goes with the know the audience bullet up there. For communicators that are focused on employee communications, there are a number of channels they can use, everything from intranet, blogs, to internal social tools, collaboration tools, videos, emails. When we used to survey our employees at Raytheon, however, each year, we would hear from them the same channel that they preferred most. And that was they preferred to hear from their manager or leader the most. And ironically, that is sometimes the channel, if you will, that is most missed or sidelined. But it really deserves the most focus because employees do like to hear directly from their manager. We would hear it time and time and again. And the return on investment in helping leaders with that storytelling, helping them be accountable for having those conversations and connecting those dots with employees, probably return more on investment than the most slickest, well-produced video that could be put together to send to employees through email. Once you have your approach and messaging, it's also important to think about technique. And here are a few techniques that I have used and have coached others to use as well. Whether it's the written word, in person, over video, there are some things that most of these techniques can help either way. First, never underestimate the power of a good metaphor. Metaphors can simplify complex topics. They can make ideas and messages more sticky. But most importantly, they can help the audience connect with a common context. Even today, when culture is more fragmented than ever, and there's less common language maybe about books and movies, there's still great opportunity to find connection through metaphors that can resonate with people and they can actually help. That metaphor can create a connection with the audience. Adding drama is also an effective technique, and this can be done by telling a story in the present tense, kind of like what I was attempting to do in my first story about my team. Bring the audience to experience that event as if it's happening for the first time. Use descriptive language, pauses, sensory images. This can all help make a story more memorable. If your audience can engage with the content through questioning or through Q&As or polls, that's another good way to help the storyteller and help that storyteller connect with the audience throughout their discussion. If there's an opportunity to do a presentation like I'm doing today, it's also important to think about these visuals just as aids to support the messaging. The focus should really be on the presenter. Slides shouldn't be convoluted with tons of data, but instead, again, help support the story. And humor, when used appropriately, can also help making memorable points as well. Any conversation about internal communications, though, would not be complete without a discussion of some of the major trends that are going on. And I noticed actually that some of these trends, for those of you that participated in the Spirit in the Workplace seminar that was done last month, a lot of them are similar. And that's not a surprise to me, given that the communications function usually intersects with the spirit of the organization for sure. Although internal or organizational teams have always played a role in employee engagement and connection, now more than ever, they're facilitating this, mainly because of the corporate America especially is still suffering from the COVID hangover. And with society being more fragmented and polarized, there is a need to help employees connect and leaders to connect more so than before. And this can't be done by communications alone. It really needs to be a partnership with human resources and with the leadership of the company. But as I mentioned, communications teams are being asked to help better understand what employees need for that connection and to make those connection points, whether it's a town hall, an event, or webinar, make them possible and ensure that that connection is there, like I mentioned in this story of my own team. Related to that, communications teams right now are really being challenged with working with leadership as they struggle with the right balance of returning to the workplace. Messaging, what messaging will work best. The communications team usually is quite involved in how to get those messages out. I've seen organizations struggle with this recently, and it's mainly because that they aren't focusing on the why, as I mentioned before. They're asking employees to come back, or they're putting in rules about hybrid work, but employees aren't necessarily understanding the why, or that message isn't getting through, or it's too hollow. So again, this is where communications can work hand in hand with leadership to help through research and better understanding of the employee base to make sure that message is coming across authentically. The greater emphasis on DE&I and ESG since 2020 is still impacting internal communications functions and external communications functions, especially with leadership messaging and some of the reporting that's required. But as companies have been pulling back on this recently in the last couple of years, with less of a focus on this, it's impacting communications teams as well. They're still involved, but maybe as the initiatives have waned, their support of those initiatives have waned as well. And of course, there's the topic of generative AI. This is and will continue to have an impact on the communications field. This includes internal communications disciplines as well. And depending on the company policy, generative AI is being used in organizations to do everything from brainstorming to research to measurement to actual writing and editing. There are some concerns that generative AI may eat into some communications jobs in the future. But one rule of advice that I like to use is that generative AI may not take your job, but someone who knows generative AI will. So the importance of communicators to become familiar with this technology and how it may be used in a way that is really a head start or a help, or taking away some of those tasks that are more repetitive in the in communications, like some of the research or collecting data to understand how communications are coming through. And that brings me to the continued focus on data and measurement. With more and more digital communications, there's more opportunity to do measurement as to how messages are resonating, or the reach or engagement that is occurring with messages. And so the communications team can be a valuable resource, not only on the back end to help leadership understand how well their communications or marketing dollars are performing, but they can also help on the front end by helping leaders understand their stakeholders, whether they're employees or customers or other stakeholders, and they can really help provide some insights into sentiment and potential communications audience analysis that will help communications plans perform better. So communications and strategic leadership, they really work hand in hand. They can help build connections between leaders and employees with each other, and of course, employees with the strategy of the organization. Thanks so much for your time and attention today. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
Hey, while people are kind of framing their questions, I'd like to start, if I may. Erin, for people who are either early career or mid-career, do you have any tips for them as far as some daily habits they might engage in to help foster connection through communications? How might people kind of think about on a daily basis how to communicate across within their teams, across the organization? Any thoughts about that?
And that means in whether it's a live workplace or a virtual workplace, Mary Ellen, or both?
Probably both, actually.
Yeah.
Especially virtual, yeah.
Yeah, the virtual one, we actually tried a few techniques during COVID when we were all just kind of slammed into Zoom right away, where we came up with a question of the day for our team, just like goofy things like what's your favorite movie, that type of stuff. And that question of the day became like this, it became almost legendary. Like, what's the question today? And you're sharing things like your horoscope, or we had tons of different questions, and people really look forward to it because, again, that was kind of, we were just getting used to it. But from a day-to-day basis, a lot of the collaboration tools are really helpful with this, with chat. But, people have a lot of fun sending memes to each And I do think you can form a good relationship with someone over these tools. However, it's still important to spend the time to, whether it's in a one-on-one Zoom meeting. I used to like to have my one-on-ones with employees over Zoom so I could see them, look them in look them in the eye and really talk with them. Same with my team meetings. I wanted everybody on camera. And then look for opportunities to meet outside of work and be present at the meetings that you attend online. It's difficult sometimes, again, you're staring at the screen the whole time, but the Q&A chats can work, sharing comments with your fellow employees, meeting up afterwards to discuss what was discussed can help. And then in the office, building networks, early career, mid-career, especially, networking is so important. And working with my students, I always tell them at the end of the class, connect with me, make sure we're on LinkedIn together, leverage my network. And then in the office too, think about how you're coming across in meetings, prepare. No one likes to prepare, but it's important to prepare. And again, some of the little techniques that I went through in this presentation can help with some of that as well. Think about, how your voice is coming across. Are you eliminating jargon from your discussions? Are you coming through straightforward versus kind of relying on business jargon or passive voice? Be active and direct in how you're speaking. That can really help you come across professionally.
I have a
Thank you.
question.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks for your presentation, first of all, and what you just said about your team and your question of the week or question of the day. Actually, my team is doing as well. We call it Forced Fun Friday question,
Yeah.
including, is a hot dog a sandwich? I'd be interested on your perspective in your perspective on techniques or considerations when you have an intergenerational workforce, which is becoming more and more the case, and all cultural workforces. I happen to work on a team that it's an emerging markets organization, but we have US based people. Consider all of those audiences.
Great question. That intergenerational, that continues to be, it will continue to be an issue, I guess. But when I first started at Raytheon, it was one of the first things that I needed to do was segment my audiences. So I think of the employee base almost like you do any type of external audience that you're trying to influence. What's the makeup? What are the characteristics or the profiles of each of those generations? And we spent a lot of time looking at that and understanding which channels they preferred. And I mentioned that survey that we'd send out. We would also send out to try to understand that through demographics. We could only collect certain information, but to understand were there differences between the generations and what channels they prefer to receive information from. So doing the research is important. You can obviously look at the qualities and aspects that are out there for intergeneration, for the different generations. But I think doing that research and surveying them individuals who are in generations that are different than their own. One thing that we used to do a lot, and I actually I played a part in, was having reverse mentors, because it was really helpful to have someone from a younger generation that could help me understand, not only are they, the digital natives, but they can also provide some input and feedback on how they like to be communicated to and with, and also managed and led. On your question about the intercultural, I dealt with that quite a bit while I was at Raytheon. We were a global team and had people all over the world. We used to get a lot of comments from our locations, especially where English wasn't the first language, because we get a lot of direct feedback that if things weren't translated or were culturally not sensitive, they were very direct about voicing that, which was good because it only helped us get better. So I would treat them just like any other audience in getting that information, looking for, now with some of the new AI tools too, translation is important because it's a respect element. And then also be respectful of time differences. This is more for external audiences, but we'd look for, before we named or used any slogans, we'd make sure that it translated appropriately in the different countries. What I also found from an external communications perspective that also ties well into internal is that each country, it was fascinating to me, like how different, even within Western Europe, how each country used different communications channels differently. So that's an important data point as well, is to understand that some are more adept at, if social tools are being used, some are more adept at, or more popular, I would say. Some tools are more popular than others. There's some great new tools too out there. There are these workforce communications tools that can help with some of the translation pieces and also to help with some of the cultural sensitivity types of things too.
Thank you.
What else?
Hi,
Yes, Mary Ellen.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering if you can speak on, so if you have the tools and the traits and the strategies, can you speak on access to them, for somebody who might not have that in any sense?
So when you mean like access to the tools, or access to the employees, or access to the audiences? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, I think my leg hit it. Yeah, all of those. So just like if somebody is out of state, like myself, and also on my own team, other than social media.
So in terms of staying in touch, is that it, Mary Ellen? Or
Partly.
okay. And is it just a matter of not being able to get in? You just don't know who to communicate with, or?
So it's circumstantial because, my husband owns this big business and I am in a position of support for him as well as for my children, and my son has many needs.
Okay. Well, I mean, there are lots of tools out there. It really depends. I guess my first thought, especially for, you were mentioning your husband's business, it's really to understand the demographics and psychographics of that group. Are they wired? Do they have computers at their, are they on the computer all day, or is it an app-based communication more appropriate?
You mean his business?
Yes.
Oh, they're plugged in completely.
Oh, okay. So like, I know many organizations use Teams and Zoom and that type of thing. Is there some challenge that they're having in communicating?
No, they have everything they need
Okay.
perfectly.
Yeah, I guess I would do some additional research and see what they, do they feel like they're getting the communications they need, and really ask them. And then developing a plan to say, okay, this is what they're looking for from us, and this is what we need to get across. Where do the two meet, and what are the types of, then I'd set, okay, here's our strategy, and then what's the action plan behind it? What channels might work that are already available to them? And then how can we create an ongoing cadence to ensure that we're staying in front of them? Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we're almost out of time. Anybody else have a question for Erin before we sign off? We all good? Well, Erin, wow, I took copious notes. Ta-da, while you were speaking. Your storytelling techniques are awesome. So I had a lot of takeaways from this short webinar. I hope everyone else here did as well. For those of you who are MSL students, Erin is teaching strategies of communications this fall. It's not too late to register for that course. And I'll look forward to seeing students, whether you're new at orientation this week or as we get back into the routine of study in another week. I can't believe the semester starts so soon. If those of you who are joining us are potential students interested in the program, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. My email address is maryellen.joyce@bc.edu. So if you have questions, feel free to shoot me a line. And I want to thank you for your time this afternoon. And as I said, looking forward to crossing paths with you in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.